Okay, Morning.
All right, so he and I actually hashed out his question. We were talking about it in the lobby.
Okay.
There are some other game companies that handle the transmedia. I know, bad word, but they handle the transmedia differently.
Uh-huh.
And that was the premise for this question. For example, take Games Workshop of the Warhammer IP. The books that they send out, that they publish, they in some cases affect the lore, but they don't really go into the actual game. Now it's a little difficult to make that analogy work for a tabletop game versus a computer game, but the question is, if they were to go back to that route, which WoW used to do, of making just self-contained novels that didn't tie in, would that effectively scratch that transmedia itch and be more acceptable for the community, as opposed to all of these books that are tie-ins to the launch of an expansion or a patch, or you have to go somewhere else to get the actual story instead of experiencing it in the game.
Yeah, so very short answer, actually, because it's something that I've spoken about so many times that I basically have it rehearsed at this point. Whenever I play a game, doesn't matter what game it is, if it's a game, whenever I'm playing it, I want to reach the end of that game and actually understand what it was that I just played. I seemingly have the same sort of privileged notion when it comes to movies and series, right? Where far be it from me to sort of pretend like I matter, but whenever I watch a series, at the end of the series, I actually want to know what the series was about. The issue is whenever I finish a series and I have no idea what the fuck I just watched, right? No one likes that. No one would want to watch a series like that. No one would want to watch a movie like that. If you get to the end of the movie and by the end you're more confused than you were at the beginning because nothing in this made any sense whatsoever. That's the issue that transmedia has when it's done poorly. When transmedia is done correctly, it can actually have an incredibly positive effect on the media that it's affecting. But if it's done poorly, it can destroy things. So the current notion from World of Warcraft is put everything that would take too much effort to put into the game, put that into the books. So we'll just have all of the dialogue and all of the inner monologue and all of the motivation. We'll have those in the books. And then we'll just sort of have the events in the game. The problem with this is sort of twofold. First and foremost, I once asked Taron Gregory, who's the cinematic creator of World of Warcraft, I asked him, do you have any cinematics lined up that's going to have the same kind of emotional impact like the cinematics, Old Soldier, Wrathgate cinematic, those cinematics? Do you have any cinematics lined up that's going to have that sort of impact on the players? And he was like, well, I don't know. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, Wrathgate and Old Soldier didn't have this incredible impact on the player because of the cinematic. The cinematic had its role to play, sure, but it was the build-up. It was the story that led to that cinematic that ultimately made those cinematics fantastic and that made us care about those cinematics so deeply. And he didn't know if those storylines in Shadowlands and in BFA and so forth and so on was going to carry the same kind of weight and have the same kind of impact on the player. This is what transmedia done badly does to a storyline. Because without motivation, without inner monologue, all you have is an event with no context. Like, I don't know why this happened. So a great example of this is the burning of Teldrassil. Sylvanas goes in and she burns the tree down. There's no inner monologue. There's no explanation for why this happened. There's nothing. There's just, she decided to burn down the tree. Now you could say, but Accolonn, wasn't there a short story about her motivations? Well, yes, there was. But as it turned out, literally minutes after the short story, none of the motivations in the short story was actually real. Because in the short story, Sylvanas wasn't planning on burning down the tree. She just decided to burn down the tree, going against what they had literally planned in the short story. And even then afterwards, there was never actually a moment where Blizzard remembered to add some subtext to it. In the subsequent book, Shadows Rising, Blizzard didn't add subtext to that moment at Teldrassil. So the moment itself is incredible and players see it, but it's just a moment. It doesn't have the necessary impact to really carry. And this is true for a lot of Shadowlands, a lot of BFA, where so much have been removed from the game so that it can be told within the book. But if you remove too much from the game, well, then it doesn't make much sense. And a lot of those moments go lost. So I would be in favor of Blizzard doing books. I love reading. So I don't want less books from WoW. In fact, I would be okay with more books from World of Warcraft. But then let's have those books be about things that isn't about the game, or at least the expansion that we're playing. So why don't you give us a book, for example, about the birth of the goblins? It's a part of the game that's never really been explored. It's probably not ever going to be explored. Give us a book about that. Show us how early goblin civilization came to be. Show us the early days of the Black Empire. There's a very slim chance that we'll ever go back to the early days of the Black Empire. So give us a story there. Maybe give us a book about the early Troll Empire. You know, dive into stories that expand the world of Warcraft, but leave the expansion's story to tell its own thing. So put all of the subtext and all of the inner dialogue and inner monologue of the expansion in the expansion, so that the expansion exists as its own entity and the books exist as their own entity, but all of it serves to expand the World of Warcraft entity. So now you have a true transmedia empire where everything expands on the world, rather than what currently happens where the books actually remove from the world in order to expand on the expansion, but now the expansion was only half, so the books add the other half. So really you're not getting to double the size, you're getting to like 1.5 of the size, you know? And Nordic, I actually do think it would sell really well. I think that would sell incredibly well. The Chronicles sold fucking phenomenally well. People love the Chronicles, and the Chronicles didn't deal with any expansion in WoW. It was just a collection of the lore as it, you know, pertains to or according to the Titans. I do believe that if you made a book called Khadgar or Medivh, people would buy it. People would buy WoW books because it's a WoW book. People would fucking love to buy it. So I actually do think it could make shit tons of money. Apocalypse, how you doing, brother? All right. Is there anything else that I missed in my answer there, Moni, or was that it?
No, I think that pretty much sums up the discussion Elrodin and I had in Q&A lobby, and I would just add that they could, just as another possibility to what you were saying, they could do stories in locations that aren't being focused on in the expansion during the time of the expansion. Basically, real time, we could have a story that's whatever's going on with Ironforge, for example, or just something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Just have stories in WoW, but let those stories also expand the universe in other places places that we might never actually go ourselves. Yeah, I'd be fine with that. I'd be 100% fine. Anyways, thanks for the question, Errol. Really appreciate it. I think we have time for one more question, Moni.